Well, thank you for downloading and interacting with our latest webcast focused on the evolution of the digital solutions economy. Today, I am excited to talk to you about a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I've spent so much time in this industry, and that is trends and opportunities in the media and telecom industries. And I am super excited to have Scott Campbell, SAP Industry Executive Advisor for Media and Telecom. Scott, welcome to the webcast.
Hey, John, thank you. Pleased to be here.
It's great to have you here. So we look forward to many more of these. So why are we here? We're here to talk about the digital solutions economy, the next evolution, if you will, of the subscription economy. We all know people out there talking about the subscription economy, and those are regular payments. But you know what? That's yesterday's news. And of course, Scott, you and I have talked about subscription models and being in telco and media for so long. We know, it's been around honestly for almost 100 years now. What we're going to talk about is the new stuff, XASS, or pay for what you use, entitlements. Talk about when you're entitled to, how do you buy a lot of a group of material. Pay for what you use, dynamic pricing models, think of Uber, outcome-based models, consumption, et cetera, et cetera. And we can see a growing number, and what's fascinating to me, and we're going to focus in here on today on telco and media, but if you look at this list of different companies, so many different companies are getting into the subscription usage and outcome-based models, companies that you would never expect to be in that industry. And I'm sure, Scott, you hear a lot of that from your industry pals, if you will.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, what exactly are we talking about? What's different about this digital solutions economy? Well, what's really different is how it's driven and how it focuses. And we look at it from the idea of this circle. And of course, although the numbers are here, you can enter this circle at any place in your evolution, from a transaction-based business to a more customer-facing solution subscription-based business or recurring revenue models. And we're talking about everything from commerce solutions, how you engage with your individual customers and how customers engage with you, whether it's through your website, online apps, registered, unregistered guests, etc. How you allow them and how they want to interface with you in terms of configure, price, and quote. How do they want to set up their offers? So many different options to go in and do bundling, but bundling has to be done based on a set of rules so that you can do it profitably. And then when you create those bundles, of course, you have to deliver them. And so what are some of the supply chain logistics and entitlements? And supply chain nowadays isn't just physical supply chain. In the past, we thought of supply chain as I ordered a good, get a good. But so many of the things that we do today are virtual or digital, and that is so particularly true of what we'll talk about today. Um, Invoicing and billing, that'll be something we focus on because it's quite the challenge for telco and media, and there's so many innovations in that space. We'll talk about that. And of course, we talk about this in the idea, Scott, of quote to cash. And I think a lot of people spend a lot of time on the quote part, but not as much on the to cash. And of course, if you don't collect the money, it's hard to pay the bills. So we talk a lot about and have done a number of webcasts on ensuring that you're back end and you're able to collect everything. And of course, under ASC 606, IFRS 15, and all of the other requirements to represent your financials accurately, you need to report and comply. But a lot of that has a lot of implications and new things, if you will, in the telco media space. So maybe, Scott, it's time for me to turn it over to an expert, and you can tell us a little bit about some of the trends that are shaping the telecom industry.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, today's telecom providers are really up against stiff competition. And of course, consumers won't think twice about switching to another carrier if they just don't have a great customer experience. I mean, let's face it, you only notice the network when it's not there. So, whether it's a fiber to the home or a mobile broadband from a 5G network, telecom providers need to provide that outstanding customer experience end to end. And this has meant that telecom companies have to continuously innovate and offer new services such as digital streaming on top of television and home security services
Mhm.
and other kind of bundled offerings that go beyond regular television channel lineups that we may have had in the past to help attract those new customers. And in fact, some of the carriers are even offering cash incentives and equipment buybacks to incentivize you to make the switch. So, like you say, it's how does that connect back into the to cash piece is of course what you're going to dig into. And then the same with media, of course. If you go to the next slide, John, the media industry has quickly adapted to today's digital solutions economy by monetizing content beyond television and theatre consumption to exploiting new content releases on digital streaming services. And those business models have evolved where digital streaming
Mhm.
presented both a licensing and a direct to consumer opportunity for content owners to exploit their content in new, particularly international markets. So we've seen movie theaters struggle through the pandemic. However, new audiences are being drawn to binge watching TV series, and media companies are monetizing insights and consumer behaviors with advertisers while taking on new challenges with consumers' personally identifiable information and handling consumer credit card information and reporting standards, like you just mentioned, John. And they're not challenges that many of these companies are frankly used to dealing with in the legacy business model for media distribution and consumption being literally in the B2B versus that direct to consumer space. So today it's really all about those multi-sided revenue models. And then again, the complexities going back in the to cash piece of reconciling that information from those literally hundreds of different sources that you may be, trying to bring that information together into your reporting.
Yeah, and you mentioned down here at the end transformation and scale, and um, what we're starting to see is the tremendous scaling up of the number of transactions, if you will, and the need to um, aggregate and disaggregate data in such ways as to allow you to be much more flexible, and that blurring of the lines, maybe, and I know you hinted at this, the blurring of the lines between telco and media
Yeah,
um,
that's right.
is amazing, right?
It is. I mean, it's certainly, different companies have experimented with ownership and so forth, but the intersection of the two, there's a critical relationship, and it's all about the subscription. Ultimately, it's about the loyalty of a consumer. I mean, let's face it, we don't want to have to switch, cell phone carriers every month, so you hope
Right.
that you choose the best one, and but like again, a lot of folks will gladly switch because of some of these incentives, but these companies still need to manage all that information, which is obviously a huge challenge, which you again touched on with the everything as a service today. You can help these companies become subscription
Yeah.
friendly and agile with the
Well,
ability to spin this stuff up, without, it taking an army to do it.
yeah. Yeah, and I'll throw one last quick thing. My daughter and I are huge fans of anime, if you will, and if we watch television, we switch between different anime providers, and it becomes part of an HBO, for example. But maybe that anime provider is not on HBO; it's on Netflix. And as you move around watching shows, you get billed different bundles, and it's
Yeah.
the need for instantaneous saying, yeah, this person's eligible for this content, right?
Yeah, well, that's right. Matching that, but also the transfer pricing. The
Yeah.
each deal's different with different carriers or different providers, and yeah, exactly. Being able to help both manage the access But, as you say, some folks will maybe license seasons 1 and 2 of Outlander to Netflix and seasons 3 and 4
Right.
to Stars and stuff. So, it forces you, if you're a fan of a particular TV series or a
Yeah.
game series or anime or any kind of genre of content, to have to span across digital services. We all took out a Disney Plus subscription when the Beatles, movie
Yep.
came out. So, it's that kind of a thing.
Yep.
It causes waves of consumers based on the drive of the content. So yeah, there's the difference here is really that the content companies previously fed into a distribution chain, whether it was movie theaters or DVDs for sale in a Walmart. So today with digital streaming, they've got into this direct to consumer. And again,
Yeah.
things like transfer pricing is critical for them to
Right.
know where the margins are applied properly, and that they're reconciling that with
Yeah.
the right advert that they ran on top of the piece of content and so forth. And
Yeah.
all of that connects together is certainly something that can leverage
Mhm.
machine learning and artificial intelligence capabilities to save humans having to do that once they help
Right.
configure those connections to the data. And again, I know that you guys are very much involved with that.
Absolutely. In fact, we're going to be doing an upcoming, just a shameless plug here, but an upcoming webinar with Haresh Chaya, one of your colleagues on the Treasury side. We'll talk about some of those implications to cash application and collection. So
It's great.
talk about some of the data challenges here. I mean, they're huge, right? I mean, we frame this. Let's talk about some of these, right? We frame this from a Bramasol perspective with this volume, velocity, density, and complexity. And there are a lot of implications to that. Volume, of course, is pretty simple to understand, except the volumes that we're talking about are back in our old days, Scott, of AT&T and British Telecom and companies like that, where we were used to, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of transactions. But when they split everything up, it changed a bit. But now we're back to, companies like Lumen. AT&T continues, of course, but others like Apple, Google, where we're not talking millions, we're talking hundreds of millions
Hundreds of
and
millions.
billions of
Yeah,
transactions, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, and then velocity, of course, is the speed. So it's one thing if you process 100 million in a month, every month or every quarter, but the velocity of these are, they're almost being processed millions and millions every day, and people want to see where they are every day. Um,
That's right.
Density, yeah, density being, how much is in there. So if you think of, um, you pick up your package because you're a big sports fan, you like British television, you have kids who want to watch children's, all of a sudden you have a bill with Comcast, if you will, that has, you know, technically 50, 60 line, could have 50, 60 different line items in terms of, what's really available to you. And then of course the interrelationships um, drive the complexity. How are you seeing companies, deal with that?
Yeah, so it kind of brings us to SAP's platform to help deal with that complexity, I guess. So a natural segue here. I'm not sure if it's the next slide, maybe John, but
Yep.
the largest, perfect, thank you. The largest media and telecom companies in the world run SAP because of our end-to-end capabilities, but also because we are an open and agile platform to integrate with literally any other technology. So we do this through a foundational piece called the Business Technology Platform, which helps you develop apps, it helps you automate and integrate your data to use insights and leverage automation to do things that would previously either just never have been done or that they had to be done manually. And our core ERP platform is called S/4HANA, and that helps you plan and manage your business, your spend, your staff, and your customers. So whether you're managing equipment planning for a 5G network rollout or a new season of a TV series, you can track the asset in its full life cycle with SAP. So, and finally, customers can realize more value by leveraging our industry cloud capabilities, which are a unique industry-specific solution suite created by SAP, or literally hundreds of partners that can help bring even more value from a business transformation perspective.
Right, and what's truly amazing about SAP is, of course, you offer this in not only a the traditional private cloud environment, but SAP is investing a tremendous amount of effort and money into the public cloud. And really, I think a lot of
That's right.
customers underestimate even the existing power of the core in terms of capability around public cloud,
Yeah,
but also the
everything on this.
interaction, right?
Totally. Yeah, everything on this screen is available in our public clouds. So it's not, again, a heavy lift for companies. We actually have companies as small as $18 million in revenues
Wow.
that are running this platform as they grow very quickly. Some of these are very high growth companies. So they need to be able to quickly have a handle on a lot of these processes to be able to scale. You talked about that and a few minutes ago, and that's the transform and scale is really at the heart of SAP. And that's, even going back to companies like Apple who've stated publicly that they run SAP for the critical business systems. So, it's part of SAP's journey has been to help these companies grow as they go through the transformation. So, that public cloud capability means that of course, much more agility for smaller companies that can get quicker time to value to get these capabilities live within a matter of days or weeks.
Right, and because we have the business technology platform, the BTP, that allows for those different integrations. You can start small by focusing on the core, your finance, for example, and maybe put your human
Right.
capital management and focus on the core while allowing you to integrate some of the other either proprietary or historical applications to allow you to quickly take advantage of the power of SAP in the public cloud, but then have a vision for a roadmap similar to, obviously one of the customers we're starting to work with, right?
Yes, and absolutely. I mean, that's where I love working with Bramasol and these kind of things, because you guys have got so much experience working with some of these big customers in fixing these kind of problems, and you can bring that knowledge to other companies to help them, fix these kind of challenges. But the bottom line is that, as you say, they'll have the legacy, let's call it, systems that they're running. Some they may have built themselves, when they were smaller companies, just to do certain functions. And of course, as they grow, they know that those systems are the critical business systems, but they weren't necessarily designed for the scale that they now are at.
Right.
So, we can absolutely help with Bramasol as well, of course, being the real partner in the middle of that can help them understand what needs to happen to get through that vortex.
There you go.
But we've done it with so many customers, John. That's the great thing. I know.
Yep.
I can be on this call with confidence, knowing that Bramasol is one of those companies that actually, and we won't mention any names, but you guys are the SAS in this area, that you come in and fix these kind of problems are parachuted in, if you like. So I know that you of all companies have these capabilities figured out.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We do. So, one of the key applications here, and we'll just touch on this because we have a lot more space, but I think it's the power. We talk about a solution called Brim, and I know you have some pretty intimate familiarity, Scott, with the Brim portfolio, but a lot of this telcos and media companies are all being powered by some of the work that SAP is doing here around that, and particularly around things like convergent charging, convergent invoicing. What are you seeing out there as more of these media companies are doing more?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, where you've got media companies that maybe are licensing, particularly in international markets. They've got different currencies, as I mentioned, transfer pricing, where they have a deal with whoever that is that they're sending the content to, that may be different deal to deal. They negotiate those at the front end, and then there may be different terms attributed to that. So managing a lot of those you know, in a manual fashion can take a lot of time because, as you mentioned, that these days it's not, you know, onesie twosies we're talking about here to one or two distributors. These are hundreds
Yeah.
of millions of transactions potentially if you have a successful piece of content. You know, look at, you know, you know,
Game of Thrones. I mean, goodness gracious, right?
yeah, there you go.
Yep. I mean, you see "got" everywhere. It's like, oh my God, you
Yes,
get,
that's right.
and then the parodies on it, and
Yes,
all of the different aspects. And of course, if you're making money off of it, there becomes royalties and licensing
that's
challenges.
right.
And how do you
Managing
manage
those,
that?
that's right, exactly. And you know, that's literally where again, leveraging the industry clouds on top of your core financials with capabilities like, even, you know, much as though we have this full suite here and it looks quite intimidating when you see this slide and think, oh my God, how
Yeah.
could I as a small company take all of this? That's, I've only
That's
got
right.
3 or 4 people in the finance department or whatever.
Right.
But you know, the bottom line is we've again taken some of these solutions into the cloud and made them
Right.
agile. So the likes of subscription billing is something
Exactly.
that you know, customers and cloud for RAR as well. Of course, you guys can help customers just fix those two little pieces so that they can
Exactly.
do the proper reporting and be
Yeah.
compliant and
Yeah.
remove some of those concerns, because that's again an area that they're not necessarily
Yeah.
you know, dealing with in the past. So you know, they have new expectations, and
Sure.
you know, you guys can help them set up for success there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So maybe we won't cover all of these, but let's talk about a couple of different use cases, some examples. Right now, we have, we're working with a company, Warner Brothers, at Discovery. We know that they are merging, and they go through a lot of revenue sharing models, wherein they're not just offering services through their own channels, but through channels, maybe even through YouTube or Apple or other channels, and revenue sharing is a big deal, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the news yesterday, but you know, it seemed that the merger with HBO and Discovery hasn't necessarily fully transpired yet in the eyes of the consumer. And you know, I
Yeah,
think ultimately that's, you know, that's a challenge when, of course, you know, they try and, I guess, you know, quickly figure these things out. But ultimately, they both have enormous brand value in their own
they do.
genre of consumption. So you know, again, as you say, creating a common technology platform to process those business transactions without having to reinvent the wheel for each business unit. You know, if HBO's got a certain demographic of subscribers, you know, it might be a completely different demographic of Discovery subscribers that like that kind of content. So, you know, being
Yeah,
able to manage that across a common
yeah,
platform is again,
yeah.
you know, where, as you say, those revenue sharing models can be managed using that, you know, that leveraged across those different
Mhm.
verticals.
A perennial favorite of ours, of course, is the world famous Disney. I think it's 100 years now, almost, of Disney being out there. Started as a company making little cartoons and has become a huge powerhouse, looking at optimizing content. And they go
Yeah.
through partnership after partnership. We think of companies like Pixar, but also, some of their other um, partnerships with other content companies, delivery synergies.
Yeah.
It's
So
quite the challenge, right?
so again, topical that we're doing this podcast on February 10th, 2023, just for anyone listening in the future. But
Yeah,
yesterday's news, again, just because of earnings reports, but you know, Disney again have literally stated in their last earnings, I guess, that they're only cash flow positive from the parks. So the parks are generating their cash. Streaming has been adding to the cost of creating the content, and of course nobody's been going to the movies, so at the
yep,
moment it's flat in terms of
yep,
revenue on the streaming side. And of course, you know, as you say, we've, you know, I think it's public knowledge that they're running, you know, Disney Plus is running SAP. So similar to,
yep.
you know, companies like Apple, Disney run SAP for those critical business systems. And, you know, we are very much involved. And I think what you're saying is Bramasol is as well in
Yep.
helping Disney with those challenges so that they can, as you say, make sure that they account for every nickel and cent
Yep.
that literally can be attributed to that streaming business, and to some of their affiliate partners, and bring all that stuff into a clear, visible, uh, you know,
Profit at the
integrated
bottom of the
view.
line, an integrated solution. Yep,
Yep.
absolutely. This is one that I was thinking of in one of our previous slides, but is new outlets. As we think of these new outlets, and we have a traditional view of our friends from
Yeah.
Disney, Warner Brothers, Discovery, these big behemoths who
Yeah.
create content, and they have their own channels, right? We have huge channels that they provide, right? But
Yeah.
the reality in many cases is these channels are getting smaller and smaller, more and more individualized.
And
TikTok,
disintermediated. That's right. So people,
disintermediated is a great word. Yes.
yeah, kind of reinventing the format, like YouTube were the early pioneer, of course, and it seems amazing it was 2005 because it feels like it's been around forever. But, as you say, in more recent times, TikTok have reinvented the format of content to be a couple of minutes long tops, and
Exactly.
the Gen Z folks particularly like that. They don't want to,
Oh, yeah.
to have too long a win to get to the point. So I think, like you say, there's a new, the traditional media is still there. You've still got television, radio, and publishing, but the new media is about search, it's about sell, and it's about social. And
Exactly.
those three categories is, I think, you've got up here between digital walled gardens being the sell, where you go to an
Yep.
iTunes store or somewhere
Hmm.
to still buy the content potentially. Although Apple as well are moving towards streaming very heavily, of course, as well. But
Of course.
but
Yep.
those new models of temporary. Nobody wants to own the content anymore. I mean, I've got boxes sitting around me of CDs and DVDs and vinyl and stuff, and I don't know
Yep.
what to do with them. So, I think everyone's
But
faced with that challenge because you have this
sure.
digital, ubiquity today. So,
Absolutely. And as you said, disintermediation, but I would also say democratization of the content, right? In the past,
yeah,
everything was pushed out
by
by
four
the
companies. That's right.
four
Today, there's
companies,
a
right?
100 million albums on iTunes or Apple Music, as it's now
Yes.
called. So yeah, exactly. And I think it certainly created more noise and challenges to reach the surface, but at the same side, as you say, the democratization of it theoretically creates opportunity at the long tail. And there is certain cases where there's new stars on TikTok that I've actually got a friend of mine's friendly with someone whose mother became extremely famous on TikTok. I can't remember her name just now, but she's a chef, and her
Oh,
son
yeah,
films
sure.
her, and
Mhm.
she's become this incredible sensation on TikTok with 40 million viewers and stuff, and
Yeah. Well,
it's just
yeah,
incredible, and
it's amazing.
sponsorship offers and people
Oh,
calling on her saying, hey, we've got, this is
that's
whoever, so
spot on.
use our products. So that is there, but she was very entertaining actually, and it's a shame I can't remember her name right now, but so there is those kind of new uh
Yeah.
stars generating out that. But at the same time, I think a lot of the major media companies and the large independents are still part of that,
Well, clearly.
the machine. So it's
Clearly.
with the Grammys the other night, so it's that kind of a uh thing where there's clearly still
Not quite that democratic. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. Kind of like politics, but we won't go there today.
No, don't
Um,
want.
so all of this is amazing. And of course, you and I come from similar backgrounds in terms of our experience. And we talked about this. All of this stuff is amazing, but at the end of the day, requires a backbone, a network to run it all. And companies, particularly companies like Verizon, Comcast, AT&T, T-Mobile, and TDS, our client, all of these are our clients in some way. Are dealing with these disruptive trends and having to deal with, I think, in a way, Scott, we're seeing what we saw back in the 80s when they broke up Ma Bell and transformed uh, the telecom industry forever. Now we're starting to see this disintermediation, this democratization, in part really transform things. But again, there's players who deliver the network, and what are you seeing with those guys?
Yeah, so like you say, they're all moving before the content industry did into the subscription model. And absolutely, I think it's something that we've seen certainly. Most of those customers that you mentioned are certainly running some shape, as you mentioned, of SAP.
Yep.
Take a company like Verizon that's pretty much running us end to end. They obviously are leveraging the ability to track that asset from both whether it's customer equipment or network equipment.
Right.
And I believe the John Vasquez, the chief procurement officer or senior VP of procurement at Verizon, said a few years ago that they were spending 25 billion on the road to 50 billion, and that was in 2018 or 19
Yep.
through our intelligent spend business network,
Right.
which is basically part of the S4 HANA platform we talked about earlier. So I think a lot of telecom companies can find their purchasing power when they are leveraging the capabilities inside their system that way, because it's just easy for
Right.
them. They're not having to go and establish another process on any other business
Exactly.
unit. Again, it's this common
Mhm.
shared capability, shared services across the company that can leverage that, and right down to, as you say, whether it's
Right.
new services they want to offer in B2B. And many of
Yep.
these companies are going into
Mhm.
offer, shortwave satellite systems and,
Yep.
different things for,
Uh,
for capabilities and,
yep.
kind of spinning up and down capabilities at exhibitions or in places, festivals or
Exactly.
whatever. So, there's new opportunities for them to help make those kind of experiences better. Because let's face it, you don't want to be at a festival and not be able to stream on Facebook. So
Yeah.
those media events and the telecommunications companies collaborating to make it a better experience. Because again,
Yep.
if you're at that festival and you're on AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile and the network's not working, you're going to blame them, not necessarily the
Yep.
fact that there's 40,000 people standing beside you trying to do
Yep.
the same thing on the network. So
Exactly. Right. Right.
we can help them scale up and down those capabilities very easily.
Yeah, and of course, interestingly, we spent some time when I was with, as I'm with Bramasol early Bramasol days in the sports and entertainment business in particular, and focus on the stadiums and the venues and venue management. And of course, if you go to uh, the San Jose Sharks and you go to the
That's right.
SAP Center, you're expecting to be sitting there with full capability to digitally stream and get data and information and all of these other interactions.
That's right.
And I know that our friends at the Sharks, consistently deal with, ensuring that their customers have that ongoing um, experience. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
I remember, in fact, the last time I spoke to Jonathan Becker, I think it was at Sapphire during when we
Yeah.
did it digitally during COVID, and he said that the biggest challenge the team had in COVID was not having the fans in the stadium. So they actually were, were wanting to take the Zoom feeds or wherever they were
Yep.
streaming back into the stadium so they could hear the cheering in the
Yep.
stadiums, to get the experience of that for the players, But
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely taking that home to
Absolutely.
the consumer.
So some great use cases, Scott. Thank you so much. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about the process and then we'll wrap up. Bramasol has been working with SAP for a long time with using this transformative network journey, and I'm sure you see this as well. We call it comply, optimize, and transform, or comply, optimization, transformation. And really, the idea is really starting, begin, begin to start. Get your firm foundation, maybe with a finance first approach for smaller companies. Larger companies are using SAP, um, S/4HANA Cloud, public cloud solutions to dip their toes into the subscription business with pilots using S/4HANA public cloud and subscription billing, for example, in a way to allow them to really begin to learn and model and learn from that process. And then as they move forward, we're working with them on optimization. It's one thing to ensure that your transactions are correct, but now how do I optimize? How do I integrate those transactions in such a way that I have an end-to-end support? We talked about it earlier on, how we connect, we'll call it the quote to the cash piece of it. And how am I optimizing those to ensure I understand my cash flows, my cash position on the back end? But also, how does that help me understand a customer who comes in and wants to buy a new bundle of material or download some content, and do they have the rights to that, right? And we haven't even touched on the extensive um, entitlements management and royalties management areas. So maybe we can follow up on that. And
Yeah.
finally, of course, transformation. As we look at channels like YouTube, who are constantly uh, evolving, or Disney, and many others, Warner Brothers, are really transforming. The business itself is transforming, and it's about creating organizational excellence, agility to survive the future. All of this is possible, of course, through the SAP platform, whether you're using um, private cloud, because that's where you are, or more importantly and powerfully, the public cloud, where it provides you that option to leverage these industry cloud solutions, build it on a basis of best practices, and then begin to um, add the puzzle pieces in, if you will, to your business as you grow and transform your roadmap. And we've used this, countless times as we talk to customers. And of course, you don't have to simply do this linearly either. We have some businesses who are doing a TCO, right? They want to transform. So they start their transformation journey with these POCs, and then work backwards, or jump around. So again, this is not necessarily per se a linear approach. And I'm sure, Scott, you see lots of companies in different positions here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no cookie cutter to this, unfortunately, but it takes obviously, as you say, just that kind of getting yourself on that initial transformation kind of step, and then being able to optimize it, and then really getting through the next level of transformation, if you like, by having that. So, we see customers that have maybe got to revisit that, and that's part of
Absolutely.
our whole value management piece, which again we could probably do another conversation on, John. But
Sure, we will.
that piece, we look forward to it. But that piece is what obviously customers using best practices can get quicker time to value, rather than being insistent that they've reinvented the wheel. It's like, look, there's
Oh,
hundreds of thousands of other customers literally
yeah.
have done this process before. So look at their benchmarking
Yep.
and see where you are, and
Yep.
there you find the value. So
Yep. Yep. And it allows you to focus on what makes a difference to you, your core value, right? Why have to do all of these crazy things just to manage your financials? Leverage the best practices and focus on what you do really well.
exactly.
So, and speaking of doing really well, Scott, you did really well. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. I enjoy our conversations. This has been a fantastic webcast. I've learned a lot myself. And so thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking again.